Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Season 2 of Leadership Jumpstart. I'm Anna Radcliffe. I'm the Director of Discipleship and Church Innovation for the RCA.
And I'm Billy Norden. I'm the Financial Education and Retirement Coordinator for the Board of Benefit Services of the RCA. Leadership Jumpstart is about helping you to get unstuck, not because we're the experts, but because we're in conversation with so many of our wonderful leaders in the RCA, and we get to walk with you as you navigate the real things in your congregational ministry settings. Welcome to another episode of Leadership Jumpstart. We are glad you're here. This is a podcast and video series about getting unstuck in ministry. We're talking about characteristics of a thriving church, and today we get to focus on something near and dear to Anna's heart, which is intergenerational ministry.
Yeah, buddy.
Focus on intergenerational leadership.
I'm super excited. We get to meet my friend and colleague, Ron DeVries. He is been a friend for a long time. We've worked together on a program called Generation Spark, which is a shared program between the RCA and the CRC. Ron specifically works on program growth, and he has a fun podcast called Spark Dialogue that highlights some of these same sort of topics around leadership development and how a congregation can create and facilitate belonging for young people. So we just want to say welcome, Ron. Thank you for joining us. We're happy that you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm just really excited about this conversation, Anna and Billy. This is really, really exciting that we can join together and dive into this topic.
Yeah, and fresh off a plane from Arizona.
Fresh off a plane from Arizona. And let me just say this. It was fun to fly from Canada into the US and visit with good friends, good family in the US, and then come back home again and get to experience snow and
Yes.
cold.
Yeah.
Just loved it. Just loved
Yeah.
it. But it's
Love
good to
that
be
for
with you.
you.
Addressing Canada-U.S. relations in this episode.
Yes, I guess.
So
Yes,
threw
you
it
are.
right in there, right at the front, Billy, just right at the front.
Be transparent and authentic as we prefer in
As we prefer.
intergenerational ministry. Yeah. So, Ron, kind of the way that we think about intergenerational ministry and the way that we talk about leadership development is not just letting leaders wait their turn, wait in line to kind of get going, but really equipping leaders from the front end. So I guess I'm wondering if we can, you have done this for many years. I would love for you to share some of your personal experiences because I think Billy would like to hear them. But also, what does it mean to equip leaders who are younger? What does it look like to do that well? Yeah, how would you respond?
Yeah, thanks for that question because I think it's really important, one for us to reflect on. Let me just speak from my own experiences to begin with. One of the important pieces of investing in young leaders, inviting them into places that they can flourish, is the word invite. One of the things we haven't done well in past years is really try to acknowledge that you are in front of us. I see
Mm.
this in you.
hmm
I would love to walk with you as you build on those gifts that God has given you. When we
Yeah.
think about intergenerational leadership and ministry, I think it begins with the invite.
Yeah.
And quite often we forget to do that, right? We if we go back to Fuller, when we think about leadership development that Fuller talks about in growing young, it's about keychain leadership.
Yeah.
It's not about holding on to the keys. It's not about just hoarding them, but it's releasing them. And really just pouring into these young people in ways that use the gifts that God has given them. And it begins with the invitation.
All right, so let's
I
talk
love
about
that.
the invitation a second. A quick story. So my 12-year-old
I knew
got
this
a
was where you
phone,
were going to go.
and he got the Google Calendar app, and so I invited him to events that pertain to him, and I invited him to our church's youth group, and he declined the invitation going forward. Yeah, so it says nobody's available for this event. Do you want to reschedule? So, all right, that's ridiculous, but what does a good invitation look like when you're inviting the next generation?
That's a great question.
I love that. And one of the things that I've learned in my experiences, and I think we can, when we think about Generation Spark as well, relational investment and capital are key.
Yeah.
Um, Billy, we're not going to be able to send the calendar invite and they're going to say, hey, yes, I'm going to join this. In fact, the opposite probably would be true based on your experience and your story. I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the key things that we've noticed in our work and in my work in ministry and as a pastor, as a person who's done youth ministry for well over 30 years, it's about that conversation. It's
Yeah.
about being face to face. Even going onto a phone call, which I've done many, many times with people, and having that conversation with them. I see this in you.
Yeah.
I would love for you to join me. And when we think about our dream team, Anna, that's exactly how it began. Is about every one of these people from Tucson, Arizona to Ottawa, Canada to Iowa to California. We had a conversation with each one of them and said, we would love for you to join me. We may not know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but would you be willing to step in faith and join this journey together into leadership development? I will say this: I've not had anybody yet say no.
I mean, that speaks to you as a leader, Ron. You have a really natural way of facilitating connection. I think one of the other things that I've learned from you is a posture of curiosity is so important when you're beginning those relationships, even before you make an ask. Um, there's another thing that I was thinking about, which is that there's a really intentional need to focus on follow up and follow through. Um, I was having a conversation with someone about a young person, and we were talking about the types of feedback that young person needed but never received. And it was because this person, they were used to the kind of systemic processes of performance reviews, for example. And so they waited for all of this feedback, to give all of this feedback in that like performance review setting. And it was explosive because for the young person, that was a super volatile way of communicating feedback. What they would have preferred is a quick text that said, hey, I just noticed this about you. I'm wondering what that's about. Or, hey, can we try something different? Just those quick little hits is way easier than waiting for that moment where there's already a lot of anxiety and communicating, whether it's a positive or negative, like giving them feedback or inviting them into something.
Yeah, there's something about leading with curiosity that
Yeah.
feels critical in
Yes.
building these relationships.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I agree 100%. And that's what comes from taking a deeper dive into that relationship, right? So there's a willingness to engage a little bit further. One of the things, practices that I have done, Anna, and I don't think I've shared this with you. This may be new information for you,
Great.
but I typically mentor new leaders, 2 or 3 new leaders a year. And the idea then behind it is to enter into a relationship that says, you know what, I'm going to invest my time in you. If you promise to reciprocate that and take the time to invest together in this journey. If you're willing to do that, I'm happy to do that. And I usually take them through a book that focuses on leadership development. This is a book that I was introduced to many, many years ago. Dr. Kevin Leman wrote it, and it's called The Way of the Shepherd. Although God is never mentioned in it, it takes practices of leadership development to a deeper level when it comes to walking with new leaders or leaders in training, whatever description you want to look at. Um, and then once we move past that invitation space that you talked about, Billy, about the calendar invite and really going into a
Such a good
relational
story.
connection, it's then saying, okay, if we're willing to do this together, how might we do that? And
Mm.
so I typically take them through and let them do some self-exploration as well. And so one of the things we look at in this is we look at their strengths. What has God given you? What are some of the skills that you have? What are some of the things that maybe you're wrestling with
Mm.
when it comes to being a leader? We look at their heart. What are some of the things that your strengths connect to your abilities, and what is your heart in that? What's your passion? What is God speaking to you that you say, oh,
Yeah.
I want to live into this space? I could tell a story about this a little bit from an event Last year, we went to Europe with a bunch of young adults. And there was a beautiful moment where, as you know, Anna, I usually spend a lot of time getting to know people.
Yes.
And and so sat on a train with this young man, and he said to me this. It was really fascinating. He came on this trip, wasn't really sure what he was getting into. Um, but he says, I'm not a seminary student. I'm going to Calvin University, just so you guys know, the CRC University. He
The
says,
CRC University.
yeah, 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 yeah. Just saying that out loud. Um,
We both went to
and
Hope, in case you're wondering.
yeah, doesn't matter. It's a Christian university.
Yes, now
It's all
sponsored
good.
by Calvin and Hope mutually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he says, I don't know really what I'm doing here because I'm looking at something that's very, very different than a ministry focus. But he says, I'm feeling this nudging to take what I'm learning from this ministry context into a place that jumps into the secular world.
Yeah.
And so we had that bold conversation that was really, really powerful. But what it did was displayed his passion, his heart. That all of a sudden you could start to build on the strengths that he was bringing to say, I see this in you.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's a place here that we can, right? And it was beautiful to watch and just hear his enthusiasm
Yeah.
grow for something more.
Ron, this is a powerful moment where you're building connection with somebody. And one thing I was curious about when you said, yeah, 2 to 3 people a year I'm engaging with, is it always finding somebody on a train? Are you finding these people? Are they coming to you, or is it somewhere in
That's a good
between?
question.
Where are these relationships forming?
Yeah, sometimes it's on the train. Sometimes it's in a restaurant asking what people are eating for lunch. Anna, we've had that moment
He does
before
do that.
happen,
He will
right?
linger over people's plates and be like, that looks pretty good. What'd you get? I'm not kidding.
Strangers are in the same dinner party.
Totally, totally.
Strangers, total strangers.
But it's about building bridges and connections with people, right? And I've learned this. This isn't natural for me, so I really had to develop
Yeah,
this over the years because
it's
quite
true.
frankly, I'm a bit of an introvert, but I realized the importance of making those connections. And so what happens from time to time, Billy, is sometimes they come to me and sometimes I seek them out because I've seen something in them and named something in them. I mean, part of our dream team, our group of Generation Spark and our denomination, those are some of the conversations we have, right? We
Mhm.
say, I see this in you.
Mhm.
Would you join? Or they say, hey, I've seen you're doing this. Can
Yeah.
I be part of that? And so it goes both ways, but I think we have to have a willingness to be vulnerable with them and say, I'm here with you, right?
Yeah.
I'm here with you.
I think, Ron, I think one of the other things is it's a demonstrated posture of listening, and a lot of a young person's experience is observing adults, right? Like adults maintain levels of power and they get to decide if they're including that young person in the conversation or not. And so for young people, they're observing for a long time to see, is this person truly going to be able to listen to me, to get to know me, to understand me? And for my experience with Ron is that's how these young people come to him, is they've seen him lurking over their food, or
Well, it's important.
yeah,
There's physical cues, right?
Totally.
We're not just talking about verbal communication. They can see things happening. They can see
Yeah.
people like them being incorporated
Yeah.
into the story.
And part of the gift, and the challenge is that older generations are not used to pulling out their phones all the time. I think they've become more accustomed to that. But, you have to catch a young person if you're on a train, or if you're sitting next to them at a pew on Sunday, or if you're sitting next to them, at lunch afterwards. You have to catch them in that couple of minutes before they feel uncomfortable and pull out their phone. And that's just a tricky cue to catch. It's just honestly, to build that relationship, to build the bridge, you have to be able to be awkward.
Yeah, it does take a certain comfortability with awkwardness.
Totally.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. There was I think it was back in 2010. I was doing some continuing ed stuff at Princeton SEM on young adult ministry. And it was really interesting. So some of the speakers there were talking about the intentionality of connecting with young people, right? So creating on ramps for connections. And it was interesting in some of those conversations, and Billy, uh, young people for years, it takes time to develop trust.
Yeah.
And, at that time, 2010, roughly, when I was at this time at the seminary, they were saying it takes about 10 to 12 hours of connection time to build trust. Now, through the years, and it's been over a decade now since that took place and that research was shared. My guess is right now, and I've seen this kind of lived out, 18 to 20 hours for a
Wow.
young person to build trust with an older person. So what that really means then is we need to be really intentional in being present with them. And so when our 12-year-old does approach us, there's this space that we need to bridge that gap somehow. And I'm not going to use terms like generation gap, but I think there are gaps that show up
Yeah.
for us. And so developing that trust. When I speak at Serve, which is a short-term mission experience with Therefore Go Ministries, one of the very first things on the first night you're there, and Anna, you've spoken in front of kids before too, you got to make a connection with these kids, right?
Totally.
And if you don't make that connection, they're not going to connect with you probably for the rest of the week.
Yeah. Right.
Other than, making maybe just a brief connection, but it's up to you to make those intentional connections, those building blocks, to the point where I remember this young man who I barely knew. Um, at the end of the week, he gives me this card, and I didn't
Mm.
even realize the card was there yet. He says, "Did you check your mailbox?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And I said, "I'll go check it in a few minutes." And I didn't because I was talking to some other people.
Mm.
And then he goes back to me. He says, "Check your mailbox." And I said, "Okay." Right. So I get to the mailbox, and he had left a card there. And it was a beautiful card just written. He says,
Mm.
"Thank you so much for being our speaker this week and being our spiritual leader. You don't know what it means to me." And I'm thinking to myself, what did I just do?
Yeah. What did I say?
Right? What did I do? What did I say? Right? I
Yeah.
mean, you
Yeah.
say a lot of profound things, but you don't
Mhm.
know what the impact is in that moment when you barely know a person, but they had a connection with you. And so when we think about these invitations, when we think about these relational connections and developing leaders, um, they watch us. They
Yeah.
watch for behaviors that so we're thinking about, what am I modeling? What am I showing? What am I displaying here?
Right.
So,
Yeah, these
Ron,
kids are going to pick up on.
for somebody who wants to build connection with a young person and is feeling really scared, anxious about doing so, what is some of the low-hanging fruit that you found for
great question.
what builds, what are the practical, real things that just about anybody can talk about to build a connection?
Yeah, so great question. So I was in an elevator in Arizona this past weekend, and they had a bunch of baseball teams playing, and these
Oh,
kids were probably no
yeah.
more than 10 to 12 years old. And there were a bunch of kids in the elevators, and they're just running up and down the elevators the whole time, and the
Oh, yeah.
parents have no idea
All
where
night
they
long.
are, right? All night long. And so it was a brief moment where these kids were just kind of hovering around a phone. And, I looked at them. They were in the uniforms. And I said, "How are your games?"
Mm.
So they all of a sudden started saying, "Yeah, we won by one game. We won this one game. We lost a bunch of others." And then they started talking to themselves and then talking to me. And so my introduction to their space was building on a common theme that we could have a conversation about. And
Hmm.
so I think when we're talking about getting past that uncomfortableness,
Yeah.
is build on something that you can maybe it's their baseball game. With this gentleman that was on the train early on in Europe, I said, "Can I sit with you? I'd love to hear your story."
Hmm.
And he was willing to share that. When I was serving as a chaplain for a drop-in center in downtown Edmonton for a lot of years, there was a lot of people that just kind of avoided you because they really didn't know who you are. But if you were willing to sit with them at a table and say, "Hey, my name's Ron. Who are you?" Um, it's beautiful. One of the things that I've learned over the years, and I have a good friend of mine, we've done youth ministry for years together, and he's the high, off the charts extrovert person, and I'm his balance. I'm the introvert guy. But what I
Mm.
learned from him was being willing to just show up.
Yeah.
just being willing to show up and be a presence with them. We did this event one year in central Alberta, so this is close to Lacombe. And for you Canadians listening, this is kind of central Alberta, Bible Belt area of Alberta, Canada. For you
I didn't
Americans
know Canada
listening,
had that. Well, I just
yeah,
learned something. You have a Bible Belt there.
yes, yes. And for you Americans, we're just north of Montana by about 6 hours. Come on over. Come on over.
Come on over.
We're
I'm gonna.
friendly. We're friendly. Um, and one of the things we did was we wanted to pour into the gifts of young people. And so what we did was we said, here's a cohort that you can experience through the weekend, and it's worship. Maybe there was something connected to another strength that we have, and maybe that was sport. But the one he was leading was called the hospitality. And so what they went was to a drop-in shelter, and Rick, I'll just call him by his name, Rick said, "Hey, I'm going to tell you what to do." So when we're at the drop-in shelter, and so there was 13 to 14 to 15-year-old kids there, and they were all kind of hovered, kind of like this, I'm not sure what to do. And Rick says, "Well, just go up to them and start talking to them." And they said, "There's no way I'm going to do that." But when he stepped up and walked over to somebody and modeled it,
Yeah.
they immediately jumped forward and did the same thing. They were waiting for that moment to be shown and then to say it was safe to do so.
Yeah.
And so when we think about those opportunities for connection, sometimes we're modeling it, and sometimes we're just displaying it by our actions through like the story of Serve. It's about us taking the lead in that and giving them the opportunity for on-ramps.
Ron, I want us to think a little bit about, we talk a lot about intergenerational mentoring and the priority that mentoring has in facilitating relationship. But there's also kind of this concept called intergenerational leadership. And, we have some kind of underlying principles about that. But why don't you just set the stage for us? Like, what do we need to know about intergenerational leadership? What's so important about it?
One of our I'm going to say a phrase that we've been using in terms of intergenerational ministry talks about the invitation of the various generations coming together, this mosaic, if you will,
Yeah.
of young, old, gender, male, female, whatever, and coming together and being present, using the gifts for leadership within the church. And so one of the things that I envision in that is where we see young and old alike being able to be used for the gifts that they have for the kingdom in beautiful ways that does not set them aside because this is just Sunday school and you should just do Sunday school, or this is just the babysit, you just do the babysit. That we are, regardless of age, regardless of gender, we are invited into places that are used for leadership within the church. So that's kind of what we talk about often in Generation Spark. Creating those spaces for safe conversations, allowing them to use their gifts for the kingdom in big ways. And one of the ways that takes place is through mentoring, right? Where the Renegotiating Faith report that came out of Canada in 2019 uses one of these descriptions for intergenerational mentoring. It's such an important piece of this is that one of the things that mentoring does is reintroduces. There's a reintroduction that takes place. And so, for example, your son, Billy, who's 12 years old, right? You have this moment of he is seen as Billy's and your wife's name? Mara's son.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how he's known within the known community. Mentoring does something really special where Anna would come alongside him, call
Which
out
I
and say,
have. We're buddies. In
right,
case you're
and
wondering.
sees this technological ability in him, who does this recording place and say, "Hey, I see this in you. Could you?" Right? Or I can walk with you and help you to find on-ramps
Right.
for this to be used in a place that, we can glorify the kingdom. That's what they're looking for, right? And so when we think about intergenerational leadership, it's about doing that. Multiple age groups being called into places where they can display their gifts and skills their hearts and attitudes for the kingdom in beautiful, beautiful ways. But it requires us to pull away from our places in which we want to hold on to all the keys of leadership, right? Like, I mean, I've known people that said, this is my ministry. I'm going to do this without any kind of plan for succession planning,
Right.
right? We need to pour into young leaders. We need to invest them. We need to mentor them. We want to have them walk alongside us, and we can learn from them. I'm sure your son is going to teach us a ton more about the stuff that he's learned over the years than we could ever teach him now. And that's beautiful.
His YouTube channel. Doesn't he have a YouTube
He
channel?
does. He does.
Yeah.
Yeah. It changes in content all the time.
His content is not consistent. We don't know what the focus of the channel is, but it's good.
But that's okay. He's trying, right? And that's really
totally.
exciting. And so it's a reciprocal learning. It's not this hierarchical space, but it's a place where we can learn together and grow together.
Yeah.
So what you're saying about intergenerational leadership is something that I think is just about any church hears about this. They're going to say, yes, we want that. We want to see people of every generation using their gifts, displaying their hearts. We want that. And yet, as any of us who have studied systems theory know, that our systems sometimes, and maybe more often than not, prevent that from happening, right?
Yeah.
Prevent that leadership. So what have you observed about how systems resist the thing that we say we want?
That's a great question.
So many of our churches have adopted old models of leadership. And so we can go back to the church order as the structural component for leadership within a congregation or within a synod or within a class, depending on what kind of leadership body we're talking to. I think one of the things that we need to do is rethink that model significantly. So often when I talk about this kind of shift, Billy, I come back to Acts chapter 6. And there was a moment where the church was doing this amazing stuff within the body. Christ had instituted a new order, and we are going to care for the young. We're going to care for the old. We're going to care for the marginalized. But in Acts chapter 6, we run into this moment where the Greek-speaking widows were being overlooked by the daily distribution of bread. And the leaders said, this can't happen. If what we are called to do and what Jesus has called us to do in the new shape of the church, then what we've just done is an error. And we need to rethink things. So they came together, they prayed, they looked at what had been happening, and they called on new leaders to step in and said, we're going to continue to sharing the ministry of the gospel, the heart of the gospel proclamation, and to pray. We want to bring in new people to help deal with these issues that are that are showing up for us. And, whenever we tell this story, in the CRC context, we say that's when the first deacons showed up in the church. And so there's significant church order shift that took place.
Yeah.
And what happens then in chapter 7, 8, 9, we start hearing the stories of these new leaders being brought into the gospel proclamation and beautiful things. The church was growing, and we see these significant things happening. What you describe feels like we need to adopt an Acts 6 model of change. We need to start thinking through what we have been doing may not lead us to a place of strong leadership, within the various generations. We've named a concern because we're doing that right now. And now we need to start thinking, God, help us to lean into a place that will really honor you when it comes to leadership development within the church. And maybe we need to change the church order a little bit. Maybe
that's so
we need
smart,
to
'cause what we've been doing is not going to lead us into the new future that we want to, because what we've been doing is giving us these results.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you found that, I'm sure.
Yeah, you can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. The thing that I would add, Ron, is, just within that leadership context that we've talked a lot about, the systemic change for older leaders is registering that they have power, that they're the ones in power. And I think even like mid-level people, like, I think generations in Gen X in their early 40s, mid 40s, late 40s, they're still kind of waiting for their moment to feel like they've arrived.
Oh yeah, because we haven't even talked about the
Yeah.
lack of sort of mentorship
Totally.
patterns and habits in the church.
Totally. But what we need to start recognizing is that our culture has shifted rapidly, and that the systems take so much longer to respond to those shifts if we don't have a replicable model of leadership development. The more that we're unfolding young people into our ministries, the quicker our systems start to transform. And so for our leaders who are, if you're in your 40s, if you're in your 50s, stop waiting to arrive. Just stop. We need to press pause, like Ron is suggesting, creating that strategic pause and shifting your job description from I need to come and I need to contribute and I need to perform to how can we contribute? How can we perform? How can we together shape this faith community? And that means if you're changing I to we, you need a we. You need a young person.
Who are
to be
you
coming
bringing along with you?
Exactly. So your job description changes. It's no longer about yourself. It's more about how can I elevate spaces of leadership for this young person. The last thing that I will say is, and I was so grateful because I was sharing this concept with a leader, and he quickly caught it. He was like, but that means if I bring a young person with me, I have to make space for them, and I could look bad. He literally said that to me. I could look bad, yes. And I was like, that shouldn't stop you. Like, you are extending your credibility, certainly, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do this, the system that you love and have served will die.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
And the reality is, it will be good for you
Yeah.
to look bad,
Oh
to
my
be
gosh,
exposed a little bit.
totally.
That's what's called growth.
It's called growth
Yeah.
and learning and change. Yeah, it's so good.
All right, so how should we wrap up our time with Ron? Ron, do you have any sort of
I
like
think this is good.
significant thoughts that we all need to soak in as we think about intergenerational leadership?
Yeah, so I wish we had another 2 hours because I just got so
We'll
much
just do a
information.
part two.
Yeah, but here's the one thing I want to challenge the listeners and the viewers with. I led a workshop a couple of weeks ago in Grand Rapids, and we talked about succession planning in ministry. And one of the things that, they were all looking for the magic bullet, that we're going to do this and it's going to fix everything. But it was a lot. It was a lot to digest. And so
Yeah.
here's the challenge that we gave to them. Identify one young person in your world who you can pour into today. Every leader that's listening to this podcast, this video, watching this video, I'm looking at you. I want you to identify one young person in your life that you can pour into. One young person that you can get to know their name,
Yeah.
get to know their heart, walk with as they journey through the complexities of their own lives.
Yeah.
Be vulnerable with them and spend time sitting on a train with them, because honestly, it's going to change your life, and this will change the life of the church.
Totally. Yeah.
That's exactly right. What Ron did not tell you is that he does that, but he does it on motorcycles.
Yes, we'll talk about that
You
later.
look for those moments
Yeah.
to engage,
Yeah.
right? And if it requires you to be stretched, as you were talking about, Billy, then that's what we need to do. We need to get off our comfy chairs. We need to get out of our comfortable spaces. We need to engage with the young people, to walk with them in faith, and to realize that this is for the kingdom. This is part of what we say, and I'm going into covenantal theology here. When we baptize our children,
Yeah.
we say we promise to do this as a congregation. And
Yeah.
so I'm praying that, Billy, your son, beyond Anna, is going to have another member of the congregation pour into him. Sticky Faith talks about this, right? They say 5-to-1 ratio. We're not talking 1 adult to 5 kids. We're talking about 5 spiritually mature people speaking into, praying for, and walking alongside the life of one young person.
Yeah.
That's what we need to step up to. That's the goal. But in the meantime, let's do 1-to-1. Let's at
Yeah.
least identify one person in your area that you can pour into.
And you're not just talking about boomers, right? We're talking
No.
about boomers,
No.
Gen X, millennials, maybe
Everyone.
Yeah.
down the line
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah. And it's fun. I mean, I think that's the last piece, as we just come to a close. Like, Ron, you've had fun. You've had a fun
I love
career
this.
working with youth and young adults.
I love this. I still do this. Anna, I'm in my late 40s and I still continue to love to pour into.
Yeah, right.
Actually, I'm 61, Billy. But,
I was supposed to say, well, we're going to have to fact check that one.
I don't think I'll ever stop doing this.
Yeah.
Because this is so important. One, for the kingdom, and two, because I love what I do. I love this ministry. I believe God's called me to this place, and I do believe that He's called me to share this story with other churches. And I'm praying that this enthusiasm becomes contagious within our churches, that we all find ways to connect, because it is fun. It's wonderful. I mean, you talk about motorcycles, you talk about the elevators, you talk about the trains, you talk about baseball. I started a ministry playing hockey with young adults because I found that was an entry point for me. And up until last year, I did it for 16 years because I realized that this was something that was really important. And through these people that I genuinely love, I got to do some of their weddings. You start to do their baptisms for kids, and you start to realize that God's kingdom is much bigger than just the building of the institutional church and our classes and synods. It's much more than that. It's in the world. If we think about a little bit of Kuiper, right? I mean, every square inch. And that's what we're trying to lean into. And so I think it's really, really important for us as we think about walking alongside our young people, identify one person, pour into that person, and God will do amazing things through that.
Oh, thanks, Ron. We are so grateful that you took the time to share with us. And it feels doable, right? It feels encouraging,
Definitely.
possible, and I'm so excited. So thank you. Anna, any parting words for our people?
Just that I'm excited. And I hope that as you think about intergenerational leadership, this doesn't feel like another thing to add to your plate, but it is kind of the spice that you're adding to the meal that you're cooking. This is just a piece of doing ministry in a way that is life-giving. It gives you the flavor, the richness, and the texture of what it means to be a minister of the gospel, of what it means to be someone who is passionate about the church and helping the church live into the community and the people that have been entrusted to your care. So I just hope that you maybe do a community garden with someone young, or start a board game group. Do something that you love and invite a young person to do it with you. So thanks for joining us on this episode of Leadership Jumpstart.
See you next time.
See ya.